Que do?
Hola. Guten Tag.
Ni hao ma.
Bonjour. Salam. Shalom.
Hi.
The world's countries have united to create
A blueprint for the future.
In September, the UN is unveiling their global goals, a manifesto of today's humans, by today's humans, for today's humans, and for tomorrow's humans too.
So, to ignite world leaders and turn these words into actions, we're making a film.
But we need you. Whether you know it or not, the world needs your voice. Let's change things.
Create.
Oops. Lost the audio.
Change.
We will live in a world where we restore and protect the life in our oceans and seas.
We will live in a world where we restore and protect life on land, forests, the animals, the earth itself.
We will live in a world with peace between and inside countries, where all governments are open and answer to us for what they do at home and abroad, and justice rules, with everyone equal before the law.
And we must live in a world where all countries and we, their people, work together in partnerships of all kinds to make these global goals a reality for everyone, everywhere. Film yourself delivering the goal that resonates with you.
We'll put it all together with thousands of your faces, voices, and all of our collective hope to create a film and show it to the world, on TV, online, and live.
Your voice matters.
Your voice matters.
Make it known.
Say it loud.
And let it echo around the globe.
The future is in your hands.
The future is in your hand.
The future is in your hands.
Don't drop it.
All right, well, good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining the St. Louis SDG Summit. We're so excited to have everyone here this morning and welcome you for participating in this morning's discussion. My name is Carlos Suarez, and I'm the president of the United Nations Association of St. Louis, and this is our first St. Louis SDG Summit to bring together voices, people, organizations to discuss and unite around the Sustainable Development Goals. Sorry for the technical glitches earlier, but as you saw in that video, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, or Global Goals for Sustainable Development, were adopted in 2015 with the deadline of 2030 to make a more just world, fighting climate change, and bringing people together around prosperity for everyone. This summit is a way of bringing us together to discuss the SDGs and within the context of the Ford through Ferguson signature priorities. And to briefly introduce the United Nations Association, we are a nonprofit organization, membership driven, and our mission is dedicated to educating, inspiring, and mobilizing Americans to support the principles and vital work of the United Nations and its agencies. We are affiliated to the United Nations Association of the United States of America, and which is a program under the UN Foundation based in Washington, D.C., which is a separate organization from the UN itself. The United Nations Association of the United States of America is made up of more than 20,000 active members across the US, and also is affiliated with a much larger global organization, the World Federation of United Nations Associations. So thank you again for being here with us this morning. We have everyone here on mute as everybody's entered the discussion. We have over 90 individuals that have registered for the event. So I know with an online event, we'll see how many people end up joining us this morning. And the format of the event will go that we'll have this opening session right now, followed by a panel discussion with Maxine Clark and Gabriella Burian, and then followed by breakout discussions, and then a quick closing session for this summit. Originally, we had started planning this back in maybe January or February. Justin here, who's our SDG chair, we had begun conversations to have it at the Missouri History Museum. And then once COVID kind of happened, all of the programming went online. So we would just want to recognize and thank the Missouri History Museum for allowing us the opportunity to partner with this important dialogue. So to start off the summit, I want to introduce to you our SDG chair for the United Nations Association. Proud to have been working with Justin Eidelberg. Justin is a board member of the United Nations Association of St. Louis and also serves as the SDG chair. He is a racial equity strategist who works with governmental leaders and contributes guidance in health, education, workforce development, and equitable community development to create an understanding of what racial equity lens applied looks like on the journey to dismantling disparities. He coaches nonprofit agencies to increase their capacity in policy analysis, coalition building, community engagement, strategic partnerships, legislative advocacy, fundraising, and organizational development. Justin wanted to join the United Nations Association of St. Louis to help share the innovative and sustainable solutions that have come from the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and to help localize the SDGs here to help the people create equitable change. Just some fun facts: he likes urban chestnut beer, the St. Louis Cardinals, the World Cup, traveling, and fish fries. So please join me in welcoming Justin Eidelberg.
Hello, everyone. Thanks, Carlos. I appreciate that great induction. I'm glad that everyone's joined us this early Saturday morning, and I hope you all learn and love some of these nice SDGs, like I do, and many others that's on this Zoom call. I'm going to share with you all. I'm going to share with you all a little background about this. Of creating this summit. And one of the key things was when I first came in as a board member, I seen there was a lot of advocacy and things that interline with the Ferguson Commission report. The language is different, the people internationally, they look different, but the goals are the same. And when I thought about it, I was like, hey, this would be great to be able to bring an international but local lens to a national and local lens via the Ferguson Commission reports and its signature priority areas. I would like to ask some of you all a nice question. How familiar are you all with the SDGs? You can just put one of those little hand things up in the upper corner, up there where it applauses, or you can just wave. I see pretty much some of you all are. I appreciate it. It's 17 of these goals. And when I think about some of the key signature priority areas that I'm about to share with you all, and I think about the 17 goals, and we think about the fight that we're here in our own region about with, as you can see, with Justice for All, with the incidents that's happening here with the killings and the police, youth at center. I think about how can our kids be the center point for us creating more sustainable and equitable communities. Opportunity to Thrive, it helps us under that standpoint, connected with the SDGs. You think about creating like economic hubs, infrastructure. Prime example, we have a digital divide going on right now. If our children, healthcare, housing, and transportation use that, how much more greater would we be? And think of the racial equity component of it all. Poor people across the globe are affected by these injustices and inequities that's going on. So I thought it was only right, and when I brought it to the board and I talked to Carlos and some others about it, they were like, yes, they were in full support. So as Carlos shared earlier, we started doing this, and before I in closing, I'm gonna share this with you all. In February of 2017, the ambassador from the United Nations made a declaration that from 2015 to 2014 is the International Decade for People of African Descent. You can look that up on the UN's website. And it talks about breaking the injustices from the slave trade and all the descendants of that. And it talks about the current impacts of that now. And it was very interesting to see that only probably 6 months after the killing of Mike Brown, that the United Nations did something like this. Because I don't know if you all remember, some of the activists from Ferguson actually went to the United Nations to get some assistance, and they came back now with a favorable choice. So I hope today that you all bring some of your great ideas, innovative ideas to the summit today in your breakouts, so we all can come back and advocate together for the type of equitable change that we would like to see. And I'm gonna pass it over back to Carlos. Thank you all. Please enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Justin, for that great introduction. And yes, today's discussion, as Justin outlined, is to create a more equitable and inclusive region for here in St. Louis, but also, these are global goals in which we want to join in that participation and where everyone can share a voice. As the United Nations General Assembly adopted the goals in 2015, it's not necessarily just about the UN and the UN's goals, but these are the goals for the people and bringing the people's voices to help share in implementation of the goals across the globe. And while 5 years have surpassed when it comes to the achievement of advancing the SDGs, there's 10 more years to go by 2030 to meet that 2030 agenda. So this is the year that they're starting off to call the Decade of Action. And so we hope that this summit inspires you as individuals to take action, with this Decade of Action and moving forward to the SDGs. Before we start our panel discussion, we have another quick video. This year also highlights another major milestone. And as you can see in a lot of, in some of the backdrops, the United Nations turned 75 years in 2020 this year. And so we want to celebrate and recognize the strong work that the UN has done to bring people together and stabilizing peace and bringing voices together to advance goals such as the SDGs. And if for those that knew of what the SDGs or the global agenda before the SDGs, such as the Millennium Development Goals. Those were another 15-year agenda prior to 2015. So we're gonna start here with a brief video highlighting the 75th anniversary. Once I get the technical component figured out here. All right.
What if there was, there's plenty of what ifs.
What if we didn't have corruption,
persecuciones o guerras,
HIV,
جرائم الشرع,
ageism,
discrimination,
stigma.
ماذا لو فهم الجميع في العالم معنى أن تكون مهاجرا بعيدا عن أهلك، بعيدا عن ناسك، بعيدا عن وطنك.
I always think, what if my home just disappears? What if my whole country disappears? And what if my daughter never gets to see it?
What if the world was cleaner?
What if my child could grow up in a world where climate change wasn't a constant threat and where cities were pollution-free?
أمنيتي إلى خاصة بعدل الفرق بين المدينة وبرات المدينة.
Tous les jours, on voit les villes grandir, on voit un exode rural des populations, et cela vient avec beaucoup de problèmes, des problèmes de logement, des problèmes d'insalubrité, des problèmes de santé publique.
By 2050, globally, there will be more people over the age of 60 than children. So we need to plan for age-friendly cities.
Но это единственным образом можно решить. Один шаг за шагом.
There's so many people that have nothing, and there's so few people that have a lot. And you think about inequality. So important to understand that we need a world that is more equal.
What if we lived in a world where all that mattered was how we cared about each other?
We're all deserving of the same kind of care and love and health and education. And these are just all basic necessities that we should all have access to.
世界上的贫富差距应该可以减少，而且将会有更多的工作机会给新的一代。
New technology can do things that are completely undreamt of. What if it was used for bringing education to rural areas? Tout ce que je suis devenu, c'est vraiment cette éducation que j'ai reçue à la base. Et je pense que si moi je peux accéder à cette éducation, tous les enfants du monde doivent avoir accès à ça aussi. 如果全世界一起合作，打造一个共享的网络空间，那么所有人都能够参与数字经济。¿Qué tal si en el mundo nos escucháramos?
When we bring our minds together, those ideas become innovation.
I think my only what if, out of many what ifs, would be what if every young person was empowered to reach their full potential?
What if the world was a more secure place for young people like me?
Мы все в этом мире временные. Y у нас есть путь выбрать.
Cuando digo que hace falta solidaridad entre países, también es solidaridad entre las personas.
What if all the nations understand that we are so powerful? We should be the instrument of peace. We should be the peace.
What if leaders and communities would understand that they should use dialogue and not conflict to address their differences?
Si c'est possible.
Do I think this was possible? Yes, because I'm an optimist.
I'm an optimist.
We need your opinions, your strategies, your ideas for us to be able to deliver better for the people of the world that we must serve.
We can change this game.
It is absolutely essential that you all join the conversation.
Everybody has to contribute. We don't have an option.
Everybody needs to talk. We need to come together.
What would the world be like?
Okay.
All right. Well, that video inspires me a lot to make the world a better place and work towards the SDGs. And I hope that creates a great inspirational message for continuing this dialogue. We're going to move into the panel discussion right now. So we have two very esteemed guests that we're so fortunate to have this morning. And, you know, this panel is really to help provide some talking material, material and points during our breakout discussions that we'll have later after the panel. So we hope that we gather some great information and insights to continue that conversation. So we have with us Maxine Clark and Gabriella Borian. So I'm going to start out by introducing Maxine. Maxine is one of the true innovators in the retail industry. In 1997, she founded Build-A-Bear Workshop, a teddy bear themed retail entertainment experience. In June of 2013, Maxine stepped down from her chief executive bear role to apply her entrepreneurial skills to her passion for improving K-12 public education and to invest in and mentor women and minority entrepreneurs. Maxine credits her teachers as her foundation for success, classroom teachers and mentors alike. To honor them, she gives back. Her next act is to make public education more consumer-friendly by creating more access for families and students to systems and supports to enrich each child's learning experience. Launched in 2015, her first product, Blueprint4.com, is a free and easy-to-use mobile app designed to help all families navigate the best summer activities, pre-college programs, and career options for their family. Her latest venture is the Del Mar Divine, the transformation of a neighborhood eyesore into a multi-use real estate development to open in 2021. Maxine is also a managing partner of Prosper Women's Capital, a St. Louis-based fund created to invest in women-owned businesses, and a member of the board of advisors of Lewis & Clark Ventures, a St. Louis-based private equity firm. In 2008, Maxine Clark was named one of the 25 most influential people in retailing by Chain Store Age. In 2006, she was inducted into the Junior Achievement National Business Hall of Fame. Maxine was named one of the Wonder Women of Toys by Playthings magazine and Women in Toys, and was also one of the national finalists in retail for the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year 2004. In 2005, the National Association of Small Business Investment Companies made Build-A-Bear Workshop Portfolio Company of the Year. It was named one of the International Council of Shopping Centers' hottest retailers of 2004 and the Retail Innovator of the Year for 2001 by the National Retail Federation. In 2018, Build-A-Bear Workshop was named to the Fortune Best Companies to Work For list for the 10th year in a row. And in 2017, Maxine was named to the Missouri Public Affairs Hall of Fame, and 2019 was given the Missourian Award for Outstanding Public Service to Missouri. In addition to her seat on the Build-A-Bear Workshop board, Maxine is a member of the board of directors of Foot Locker Incorporated, and Maxine is a recent past member of the National Board of Trustees of Teach for America and is a local St. Louis regional board, the Board of Trustees, and the Executive Committee of Washington University in St. Louis, the Board of Directors and Executive Committee of Barnes Jewish Hospital and its Goldfarb School of Nursing, the Board of Directors of Beyond Housing, and the National Board of PBS and the Local 9 Network of Public Media Board of Directors. She is also a board member of Parents as Teachers, New America, and a member of the Committee of 200. Maxine is a graduate of the University of Georgia and holds an honorary Doctor of Laws degree from the St. Louis University and a Doctor of Humane Letters in Education from the University of Missouri St. Louis, and an honorary associate's degree from St. Louis Community College. In 2006, she published her first book, The Bare Necessities of Business, Building a Company with Heart. Please join us in giving a round of applause and a great reaction for Maxine Clark. Also on the panel is Gabriella Borian. Gabriella Borian is the Global Director for Sustainable Food Systems at Bayer Crop Science. She is also the Strategic Advisor for Food and Agriculture in the Americas for the WB CSD, and an executive board member with the Ladue Education Foundation, while serving as a chair for the St. Louis Business Community Partnerships and Bayer Latin Business Group Vice President. Gabriela joined Monsanto in 1996 and has served in a number of leadership roles throughout the company and with Monsanto joint ventures. She directed the first Monsanto Regional Sustainability Initiative as Sustainability Manager in Brazil. In 2012, she became Monsanto's Sustainable Agriculture Global Director at Monsanto World Headquarters in St. Louis. In August of 2018, Bayer acquired Monsanto, and she became Bayer Global Director for Sustainable Food Systems. Gabriela is an agricultural engineer with a master's degree from University of Science and Technology in Languedoc in France. Sorry if I pronounced that wrong. She has also received advanced training in the field of sustainability, postmaster course at the Université Laval in Canada, sustainability specialization, Unicamp Brazil, executive course on sustainable development, diplomacy and international program on the management of sustainability, and the Sustainability Challenge Foundation in the Netherlands. So please join us also in welcoming Gabriela Bourrian. For those who are just joining, thank you. And my name is Carlos. Ario Benson was going to be moderating this panel and had some personal things come up, so I'll be taking over the moderation for this this morning's panel. So to start off with the discussion, as we're talking about the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, having started in 2015, really with the power to create a better world by 2030, ending poverty, fighting inequality, and addressing the urgency of climate change. I'll start off with Gabriela. And firstly, do you have a favorite SDG out of all of them, or maybe a group of SDGs, and what really speaks to you in that capacity? And make sure you're unmuted.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Carlos, for the opportunity, and thank you to United Nations Associations of St. Louis. This is really an honor, and I'm very excited. And also, I need to let you all know that my mom is calling from Brazil. Then, hi, Mom. Good to have you here. Then, in terms of sustainable development goals, this is really the reason why I believe I wake up each morning. This is what makes us energized, in fact, and knowing that we can and need to be part of the solution. Which ones are the most close to my heart is really hard, but some are crucial, in fact, to solve, and the climate change is one of them, right? We all have been feeling this. Each month is hotter than the one before. My mom, in fact, that's here, lives very close to the sea in Ipanema, Brazil. Then we all know that this will mean a big change. And on top of this, we can only solve climate change if we integrate the diversity and equality. Then the climate change, then for me, is one key, the SDG 13. If that being said, the relate to gender equality, that's the 5, is a must for us to find new solutions. Only with different thoughtful process, we can find new solutions for climate change and for others. Then with that, I'm going to the second one, that's gender equality. Hunger, of course, is a must. This is, we all know, everyone that's calling Saturday morning here certainly knows the situation. We are going not in the correct direction that we should as a society. Then hunger is becoming a most worse problem than before, especially with COVID now. Then this is the SDG 2 is one that the hunger is one that we need to solve. And finally, one piece that's necessary is not in the entire SDG that I would say the crucial, but one part that is the food loss and waste. Then food loss and waste is a target of the SDG 12 that's consumption, sustainable consumption. But food loss and waste is a piece that's very important for climate change and for food hunger too. Then all those together, then in a summary, I would say that I believe gender equality is a tool, an important tool to face climate change that is necessary for us to stop food hunger and the food loss and waste. That's the 12.3 is also necessary in order to face a new world, to have a new world by 2030. Then those are my priorities in everything that I do with my local community here in St. Louis, with our global partners, with Bayer, and with the schools where we can act. Thank you, Carlos, for this.
Thank you, Gabriela. That was great. And also to highlight the Sustainable Development Goals from your perspective, Maxine, is there one or maybe a couple that really speak to you? I know Gabriela had a great view, and I'm sure there's lots of tie-overs that you probably have. Yes. So what speaks to you and the work that you're doing? And from your experience, you have a great amount of experience in the private sector, and now going into your really you've been doing transformational work across the board, but like really with the unique Del Mar Divine project, what are some things that really stand out to you?
One thing I want to say about this, because I think it's so true, that there's so many, whether it's the Ferguson Commission or it's the United Nations goals, they have many things in common. And none of these things are like rocket science. We've known about them for decades, and putting them down on paper makes you realize that we're all connected in a way that we had never imagined. And while this project started out, the Del Mar Divine in particular, started out as an idea that I got from, spending a lot of time at Cortex and wondering why there wasn't a place like this for nonprofits who, like everything else in St. Louis, are kind of fragmented. So I guess my favorite one was the sustainable cities and communities, because you can't sustain fragmentation. That's been the bane of our existence here, and it's continuing. We have to figure out a way. So my idea was, one day to be able to find a place where we could bring nonprofits together like we were bringing for-profits together, and also in that process, also help economic development. I didn't know where that would be. I just thought in my head this would be something we should work for in St. Louis. Use good ideas that we've already done, like Plant Science Center, Cortex, 39 North, all these good programs. And then one day I really literally was leaving an education project I was working in the West End. And I turned right instead of left, and I drove by this hospital, the old St. Luke's Hospital, they were nailing the sign in the ground that said it was for sale. And I thought, well, who's going to buy this, and what are they going to do to it? Are they going to tear it down? I love history, and I love the idea that we have so many beautiful architectural buildings in St. Louis. And why? Not that this is such a beautiful architectural building. Excuse me about that, but behind the newer buildings is the original building, it's worth sharing with the community. It's worth understanding our history. It's worth understanding that way back when, at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century, people were doing good things for each other, and they were collaborating, and we've kind of forgot about it. In fact, St. Luke's Hospital was the first hospital that collaborated, the Episcopal and the Presbyterian Church, to create a place for well-being. It was a hospital, and it was a state-of-the-art hospital at the time, just around the time of the World's Fair. So how did we forget all this stuff? How did we forget that we used to work together? How did we forget that we used to build cities that were on transportation lines, and the transportation was easy access, had parks that surrounded us for not only healthy relaxation, but also for good air, and then also food. The food situation in many of these same places, the economic desert or the housing desert is also a food desert. And so, I don't know that we could have done everything, but the way I think is, well, we could have an influence on everything. And so we are actually a project where we will house nonprofits, about 40 nonprofits that already exist in the St. Louis area, and a couple that want to move to St. Louis because they want to be a part of the Del Mar Divine, which I'm pretty excited about. But really to allow them to do better work. I'm not the person dictating what the work needs to be. The community needs to do that, but they need a space to do that work. They need a platform of which to all collaborate together. And also, which has become more obvious, the technology is not equal for everyone. And we thought, and we hope we still can do this, that our building could be that kind of beacon in our community where people could come, the community could access it for online classes or homework, or that our technology that we would be able to build in our building would spread to the community. It's still pretty complicated. I'm just too much of an optimist to believe it can't be done, but it is something that we're working towards. So we really believe in a lot of the strategies and goals of the United Nations, whether it's cities, reduced inequalities, or industry and innovation, the entrepreneurship. It's all going to be possible at the Del Mar Divine, and hopefully there'll be other buildings like this in St. Louis, created across our community where people can work together and then we can all work together. We can easily come together to strengthen our community. Excuse me.
Well, great. Thanks, Maxine. Yeah, definitely with providing a great space for nonprofit organizations and, the development of cities and how cities are going to change, especially in the area where Del Mar Divine is located. Those are, I think, going to address and solve a lot of the targets of the Sustainable Development Goals. And also moving into the direction of, when it comes to, large company like Bayer, for example, and the footprint that you have across the globe, and, having such an influence in kind of, I think everyone's daily lives, most likely through the many aspects that Bayer conducts and through the food supply chain. How do you envision, or how do you see, and how does Bayer see that, really impacting grassroots change at the local level through its work in, achieving the SDGs? Because I'm pretty sure Bayer as a company has maybe adopted or is supporting the global goals as a company. So what does that look like from your point of view?
Wonderful, good question. Thank you, Carlos. Indeed, Bayer as a big organization has a big responsibility. Then for us, when the SDGs were launched, we started right away to incorporate in our strategy. Then we don't see this as a side point. On the contrary, sustainability and the SDGs need to be part of our strategy. Then in terms of decision making, business decision, everything is totally connected to the SDGs and Sustainable Development Goals. And I can provide you three main key goals that we have that are totally connected. Those three are to deliver by 2030, just like the Sustainable Development Goals. And those three are also related to 100 millions. The first one that is very close to what I do is we will be empowering 100 million smallholders, farmers across the world, especially in low and middle income country. The second one that's also 100 is 100 million access to women's in underserved communities. We'll be providing this then family planning, access to family planning. This is one thing that's a big issue for them now. And finally, we need to expand access to health to 100 million also people in underserved communities. Then all those three are key part of our commitment. And in order to look how we are doing, we have a sustainability committee with outsiders. Then all people from across the world, from minorities, are looking how are we advancing this. On top of this, climate is also of course one key point. And then we'll be neutral, carbon neutral by 2030. And we believe everyone should be doing the same bold step, otherwise we can't have our life still on the earth. Then we'll be carbon neutral by 2030, and more than that, helping communities where we live to advance toward carbon neutral. And finally, environmental footprint. We also have the goal to become, to reduce by 30% of our environmental footprint by 2030. Then answering your question, totally connected. We know we have still more work to do. There is a lot to be done. And the way we see we can advance is ensuring this is totally integrated to every and each one business decision. Sustainability is part of the lens when we decide for a product or for a market or everything else. Thank you, Carlos.
Very well. Thank you, Gabriela. And yeah, those are huge goals that are definitely going to impact a lot of people, from providing access and family planning for women, access to health, better access to health for 100 million people, and reducing, environmental, I guess the environmental footprint by 30%. Yeah, those are major goals that by 2030, it looks like we have a good 10 years to go. And what's maybe been some progress on those goals within the last 5 years, or do you have any measurable outputs in this kind of 5-year progress?
Sorry, I was in mute. Yes, we have. Then this is now one big piece that's related to this is we have a transparent report that is online, and then everyone and each one can take a look. Where we are, one big piece related to climate has been implementing with farmers in North America, for instance, and in Brazil too, for that matter. We are implementing solutions, then the farmers can feel part of the process to adopt new solutions in their own farm. Then this is a big one. We have now a partnership with USAID, and we are calling other companies, everyone that can join us. We believe carbon market is a crucial one, and we are stepping up. Our CEO has been very outspoken related to this. The accountability, the economic life needed to integrate carbon, otherwise we will not be able as a society to advance. But yes, that being said, we have more than 100 farmers implementing our solutions here in Latin America too, and a big business unit is now working related to carbon under the umbrella of the commercial area. Then yes, our main, I would say in a nutshell, I would say our main advancement has been integrating sustainability and making this part of the commercial unit. And then this will be certainly helping the advancement. Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you, Gabrielle. And Maxine, with talking about sustainable development and along the lines of the SDG around sustainable cities and communities, with the work that's being done at the Del Mar Divine, and I know it's a work in progress, that's, I believe, going to be launched or built, or I guess built out in 2021. What do you think are some lessons in the progress or process that you've been going through with the project on creating a more prosperous and equitable community? And I'm sure that's a work in progress as things are moving forward, but what are some things that really stand out to you?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And very big thanks to Justin, because he's a neighbor in the area and he's really advised me over the last almost 3 years now on things that, he sees every single corner of the neighborhood. He's lived there a long time. And so it's really helped me perspective. But the first thing is that the building is a historic building. It's over 100 years old. And so we are preserving it. It is not being torn down. It is being reimagined. And the original hospital, as I said, is right in the middle of the hospital. I mean, they built around it, but they did preserve it. And so when you go inside, you can see the difference of the way they built things in the early 1900s and the way they built things in the latter part of the 20th century. The hallways were bigger, the ceilings were higher. I'm not sure that that is good or bad. I'm just saying you can see the difference of how we've learned to adjust building styles and needs. The one good thing about this building too is that it's kind of the new part of it, and it's not new, it's over 50 years old, the most recent building, is that it was neutral. It could have lived any time. It could be in any decade or any century. And that part I think is interesting. And I don't think people necessarily think about that when they build buildings. They build them to be interesting for the times. They don't necessarily think about what it might be 100 years from now if somebody had to reimagine it. And so when I see some of these really very interesting but wild buildings. I think, what is that going to be, 100 years from now? Will it still be an apartment building? Will it still be, and in St. Louis, we have a lot of that. We have absolutely magnificent churches and beautiful old pre-war buildings. And some of them are still, functioning as exactly what they were intended to do 100 years ago. But others have been fallen down or been torn down or have been mostly torn down, and somebody put something else on that lot. Not necessarily a bad thing. So for me, this has been a really interesting study of history, study of architecture that existed in the history, study of the sociology of how people worked together when they didn't have all the modern accoutrements to build something. And then, of course, we're dealing with, as we're dealing with the reimagination of this building, we're taking out all of the bad stuff that was built into it that nobody knew was bad at the time. All of the asbestos and all the things that were there, even in a hospital. It's hard to imagine, but we didn't know then what we know now. And we'll always have to be imagining when things when we find new things and new ways that make people safer and healthier, that we have to rethink it quickly. I don't know that we should let something stay for 100 years that's bad, that we should let it be, just sort of work its way out of the system some way. Because it's always more expensive later than it was if you dealt with it from the beginning. So I've learned a lot in this building. I've learned a lot from the neighborhood. I think we can be a lot of things there, from being a very sustainable building in all the sense of sustainable, although it's not built as a LEED certified building because it was built so long ago. We're going to try to make it as much as possible with all of the new lighting, the electricity, the water systems, all of the things that we have to put in it are going to be as good as we can make them for the long term. And even though, and all those things are very expensive. So that's part of the challenge. How do you take an old building, sustain an old building, sustain the history of a neighborhood, and also make it for the 21st century or the 22nd century or any other century in the future within reason, and also something that people, because we always in St. Louis want to deal with the problem of the moment. We don't want to solve the cause of the problem. We just want to put the Band-Aid. And that's really what we have, is a lot of buildings that need to be, beautiful buildings that need to be reimagined, and they need more than a Band-Aid. So I think we have a lot of work to do if we're going to save our community's beautiful architectural heritage and also make them usable buildings for neighborhoods as they exist today and how they want to exist in the future. I mean, Justin's big on this about taking down old, falling down buildings so they're not dangerous, and let's reimagine with a code, a standard that we can build to make this neighborhood last for hundreds more years.
Great. Well, I think, that also sounds like a great plan for building a more sustainable and prosperous future, looking at, obviously looking ahead at 2030, but also way beyond, taking some of those buildings that might not be in use or might not be up to standards, and really utilizing them for the community. And I feel like, with the Delmar Divine, that's going to be also a great catalyst for the community at large, and bringing those projects to fruition further. And just a side note for everyone here as well, if anybody has any questions, we entertain raising your hand, or if you want to write your question in the chat box, we'll do as best as we can to address questions during this panel discussion. So feel free to start thinking about those. And we also do have, I believe, a few people from outside of the St. Louis region attending the summit, as well as internationally. So we're glad to have participation from outside of the St. Louis area for this summit, and hopefully inspires people from outside this region. So moving on with the questions, Gabriella, when it comes to maybe some mechanisms, at Bayer to provide, better equal access throughout the food supply chain, through a racial equity lens, what might that look like? And what are some things that Bayer is doing to, secure that or provide that access?
Thank you, Carlos. Yes, we all know the challenge that we face as minorities, and I'm Latin, and I see many people here calling from the minority segment, and we know that food insecurity is really stronger for communities like those than like Latin, like Afro-American, etc. Then if we, and knowing that food for all is one big part of their mission and vision, in fact, our big mission is food for all and hunger for no, health for all and hunger for none, and then we really work each day to ensure there will not be one person with food insecurity by 2030. Then, and we know the reality also, right? Then 1 in each 6 are food insecurity if we consider white children. 1 in each 4 are food insecurity if they are Latin, like myself. The children, those are numbers for children. And 1 in 3 if they are from Afro-American communities. Then those are children. And this is something that we cannot allow, right? And a big company like ours relate to food, really need to ensure we will be providing answers. But this is a complex problem. Then the way we look at this is, there is unfortunately not one single point that we can go and solve this challenge. There is a lot. Then what we are, how we are addressing this is, first of all, our supplier procurement. Then we use a lot the procurement across the world, here in St. Louis too, and across the world, hiring service. Then in our supply procurement process has one strict guideline about minority owners. We know that if they have access to provide service, they will be better off. Then this is one big part, and we have an entire team taking care of this, providing everything, ensuring that those people have access, have capacity building, and are better look for the company, because we need to ensure we are evaluating this very well, considering the challenge that minorities have been facing to get where they are. Then this is one piece. Second piece is internally. We need also to ensure internally across the organization, health, in pharmaceutical, in crop science, everywhere, minorities can have their voice heard, and those minorities can also be part of the process to define how we'll be ensuring our products will be providing minorities better access. Then we have business resource group, and in fact, I'm now president of the Latin, but we have then 9 more Afro-American, it's at LGBT, and those are responsible to work with the strategy part of the company to ensure that we as a company advance this in a good process. And finally, we are also working in a way that we enable minorities to get access to scholarships, to funds, to our Bayer Foundation, and to awards and recognition and capacity building. Then for this also is another big piece across the world, here in St. Louis too, and across the world, to ensure we provide access to all the tools that are necessary to make the change that's crucial for us as a society. The way we see it, very important, is not only because it's good, but because this is the only way our business, our society, our companies can perform better. Then we know we need new solutions. And to find the new solutions, and the St. Louis community, Maxine has mentioning a lot of very important new approach. And this is the only reason we can find a new approach for those challenges that are out there, is with different ways to look at it. Then this is where we need, business need minorities. It's not that business want to be only good for the society, but we need different voices. We need people that look for situations in a different approach. Then this is why it's important for business that want to be there successful for the next 100 years, that our society perform well, and that minorities can have a voice for our business to be better and to have less risk. Then this is really the way we are approaching. There is, again, there is a lot yet to be done. We have another piece of our business that's called LEAPS, L-E-A-P-S. I invite you all to Google if you want, LEAPS by Bayer. That's the same. It's providing startups a new solution, a new fund, and new support, and even support in kind support from our experts to ensure those startups can be bright and can survive and can thrive, bringing new solutions. And we have many here in St. Louis, of course, and across the world. Thank you, Carlos. Over to you.
Thank you, Gabriela. Yeah, that was, you know, there's a lot going on, and with the projects that are at hand, and bringing in the participation from minorities, from the Latinos, the African Americans, I think that's also essential to this conversation, and how we can, you know, maybe create some additional solutions or help solve additional problems throughout the course of this conversation. And I like to hear what all that Bayer is doing in that progress, and that you guys are ahead of, sounds like you're on top of it, or even ahead of the curve. We also have a question from the audience, Gabriela, and from Rontasia, and how has COVID-19 impacted food security within your company?
Sorry, I was in mute again. Yes, COVID-19 has been impacting. In fact, let me start from the beginning. COVID-19 has been a big challenge for, especially for communities like those that we are discussing here, right? Then our company, then two ways to address this question. First, our company, we have been since the beginning working very strong to ensure food will be provided everywhere, calling some governments that are closing not the walls, but closing their countries to what's coming from outside, calling the attention that workers for farmers' productions, for instance, many times comes from different countries. Then, and we have a good example here, very close to us, United States. So many workers for farmers come from Mexico or from countries like mine, from Latin America. Then it's not possible for farmers to produce food if the borders are closed. Then, and this is the same in Europe, the same in Asia, the same in Africa. Then this is something that we have been working with World Business Council for Sustainable Development, with governments, calling the attention that we really need, farmers need, we all need food in our table. And in order to get this food, we need workers from different parts of the world. Then this is one big piece. More than that, goods also need to be provided, and the goods need to cross the borders. There is no single solution such as let's close our border because then we're better off. No, it's not possible because food has been produced, because we have different we have weathers, different situations across the world, and we need the cross boundaries of goods and of workers. Then answering your question, we are facing a big challenge. It has been not easy, just like for all the companies in the food and health sector. We are working very, very strong to ensure we'll be overcoming this situation. Generally speaking, we have been able, because our community has been awesome, and our employees, Bayer has around 100,000 employees across the world. Then those are really stepping up and helping us to produce. Then our seeds facility, for instance, in St. Louis, with our safety requirement, but are producing. I work from home, thanks to all this technology, but many of my colleagues need to go, and they have all the safety requirements to be able to go to the facilities, and they have all the safety support to produce our seeds, produce our products, and ensure there will be food for all. But then once answering again the question related to COVID, that I believe is really important, not only related to COVID, but related to pandemic, generally speaking. Then how can we ensure, one thing that we are working now is how can we ensure we will be building a better back right? Then not the same way we have been doing, but we need to ensure we will be having, we as a community, as a society, companies included there, but we need to ensure risks such as this one are better integrated when we evaluate everything that's going on, all the trends and all the strategy. Again, back to my point at the beginning, minorities are crucial to ensure we will be able to find new solutions and we will be considering all the challenge. Then this is one piece that we are doing. Then in a short answer, we are surviving. We are working with a different approach, ensuring digital transformation is part of our way to go, and innovation also need to be more integrated. Then one piece that I like is we know more needs to be done. Our CEO has been very outspoken, our president too, both are calling, we need new solutions and we need new approaches. And the good part is communities like this one, your community, Carlos and Justin and Maxine, are crucial to bring these different approaches and new solutions. Then thank you for the question, yes, very good.
Thank you, Gabriella. Yeah, COVID-19 has definitely had a major impact across the board and across the world. So I'm glad to see steps that are being done to help mitigate that. And I know there's constant challenges and issues with that. So glad to see the proactiveness of you and your team at Bayer. Shifting a little bit to Maxine, excuse me, looking at 2030, and what the world may look like then, and with the exciting project that you have with the Delmar Divine, what's kind of your vision for how that's going to look in the future? And maybe also looking at the signature priorities outlined in the Ford through Ferguson Commission report. How do you see the Delmar Divine addressing those priorities and making that a reality, maybe in 2030, or if you have other goals in mind, timelines?
Well, I want to hold to the 2030. I think it's important that we focus on as soon as possible, and that is not that 10 years is just right. It'll be tomorrow. So we have a lot of work to do to make this happen. But I do believe that the reimagination of this location in a very important neighborhood in St. Louis, this neighborhood is halfway between the Loop and the Central West End, halfway between Washington University and the Washington University School of Medicine. It's on a major bus line. It's near half a mile from the park. You could walk it. The trolley, if it ever does come back to be, it could be a great way of connecting people from our location into the Loop to give more economic, shopping, eating, communicating, being neighborly, all kinds of things that are possible. And that's kind of what I see. I also see that all of our phases will be done by then. And in our phase 2, which was the nursing school for the hospital, it's perfect for perfect for a school. I mean, it has classrooms, it has a gymnasium. Even though they're quite wretched looking right now, they can be resurrected. And so I see children and families, in our neighborhood coming to our building for activities. Gateway Greening is one of our tenants, teaching children how to cook, how to eat, how to grow, in a sort of a mini version of what Gabriella was talking about earlier. We have children engaging with the other nonprofit tenants. We're right near the Maker District that Jim McKelvey created. We can see taking children coming to our location after school and getting on a trolley or a bus that we could take them down there for makerspace classes or art classes at the Craft Alliance that's moving down there, or to the park, to one of the museums in the park with a curator or a docent that will teach them about St. Louis, because it'll be possible, because it'll be proximate, because people will trust us, because people will see this as, I use the word beacon a lot, but as a place where everyone is safe to come, because it's for everyone. It's for the families that need the services that are in the offices. It's for the school that might be present in where the nursing school was. Maybe it'll be an early childhood center, or maybe it'll be a elementary school. We don't know yet. Maybe it'll be a school about sustainability, totally about that it'll be perfect for the 21st century. that seniors will come to the building and take classes in the building and use our facilities for self-improvement, that people will be healthier because they can stop in at one of the offices there, one of the medical offices that might be there, and get a flu shot or get a checkup, or work with one of the counselors in the that's a health and fitness counselor. There's all kinds of things that are possible here, and I hope that by sooner than 10 years, actually, you'll be so proud of this. And people say, why didn't they do this sooner? What took so long? Because this neighborhood was once a very middle-class immigrant neighborhood. It was prospering. There was grocery stores and delis and barber shops and beauty salons and ice cream parlors and all kinds of things on Del Mar. And we just want to take that and make it better, and then also move north, like start to make all of the connections, every street better, every neighborhood better, and engage with the actual best assets that we already have. We have the Monsanto, the Bayer Y on Page Avenue in our neighborhood. It's one of the fastest growing Ys in the neighborhood. So imagine going back to when I was a little girl, I went to the Y in my neighborhood. Imagine people coming back to the Y for meetings, classes. We want to be part of that. We're part of that network. And we want to make sure that we think of community as much as we think of technology, as much as we think of all the other things that we have to worry about in a building like this, is that it's about making community feel safe, willing to talk with each other and engage with each other, and make the neighborhood, make the community, the broader St. Louis community, but certainly the neighborhood that we live in, much, much better than it is today. But everybody can have a say in it. That's a hard part, because not everybody comes to the table right now. Some of the poorest people don't feel they're welcome, and some of the oldest citizens feel like they don't have, no one's going to listen to them. And so we have to drag them out of we're hoping to create events and learnings and things in the building that will bring people out of their homes, because they'll be curious, they'll be interested, they'll want to learn. And then they come one time, they'll come 2 times, and 2 times will be 3 times. And before we know it, we'll really have a much more engaged community through using all of the techniques of engagement, not just lectures and not just food, but all kinds of things that can bring people to think about the future of St. Louis together and make it better.
Yes, thank you, Maxine. And you're spot on with, yes, we need to accomplish this, way before 2030. So I'm glad you have that mindset in what you're doing. And, it's definitely going to be a transformational project, and glad to see, even the partners that you have working with you, and, going back to the why, and bringing people to a really community, I guess, staple on people meeting, discussing, and solving problems that they see. So hopefully it will definitely be a great catalyst to help solving our problems moving forward. And I'm glad to see that happening. We do have a question from Dick Fleming. So I'll open the floor up to you.
Thanks, Carlos. I have a question for Gabriela, and setting the context for it. I've had a long history with the predecessor organization with Monsanto. I was recruited here from Denver to head the Chamber of Commerce, which I did for 18 years before I became CEO of my current company. And this community is a lot to the legacy, recognizing Monsanto was, and obviously Bayer is, a global institution. Nonetheless, the impact that Monsanto has had on the local community, and certainly there is, on here was the initiative that precipitated what we call the Bio Belt, and really becoming national and international center for plant and life sciences. As we talk about the challenges that have been discussed this morning, and the kind of effort that is underway in the Del Mar Divide and other places to deal with a legacy of really systemic neglect and racism in the northern part of our city. some of which was part of a game plan that goes back to what was called the Team 4 report, was to neglect North City long enough to let it become completely deteriorated so that it could be bought cheaply and developed. And it's Walter Johnson's current book talks a good bit about that. As we look positively to the future of dealing with needs like in overall needs of food deserts and medical deserts and digital deserts and job deserts, might there be some initiatives that that Bayer is undertaking throughout the world that could be aligned specifically with those kinds of needs in North St. Louis? And you know, I look to the kind of opportunities I just mentioned, and we've heard from Maxine about her vision and initiative with Delmar Devine, and Dr. Lenahan has now announced a medical school and a teaching hospital in the area where the NGA is building their new headquarters. But I guess my question is, given the city is taking place in Bayer overall, how might that overlay the individual initiatives down to the community-based organizations that they're undertaking to fulfill sustainability issues or food availability issues at a scale in St. Louis? Pardon the long question, but be interested in your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Dick. This was, in fact, a very good point. And although it was breaking a little bit, I believe I got your perspective. If not, please, you can complement after. But what you are saying, I believe it's almost about one invitation for action. And while you were talking, I was like, oh my God, this is so awesome. I believe, and Carlos, perhaps this was what was in your mind when you put together this book here. Then in my mind, this is really what should be all the conversation, but this one we can and should, in fact. This is how St. Louis has been, right, overcoming to all the situations, it's coming together. And this, I also need to say, I have been receiving some questions here in the chat. Team, this is awesome. I love this kind of very respectful, but at the same time thinking, how can we go ahead and make changes, really, considering we have the team that we have here in this chat, like 45 people, it's really people that will change, right? If not us, nobody else. Mm-hmm. Who wake up in Saturday morning to be part of a discussion, only if we really are committed. Then, Dick, thank you, because I believe your question is more a call for action, in my opinion. And if I'm getting you right, I'm on board. You can count on us. And I know my colleagues, they all will be on board. And I know our president, Leon, will be on board too. Then totally on board to think together. Carlos, perhaps this is one action for us as a team, and Justin and Maxine also putting together our different perspectives, and Dick, of course, because he invented this now, and sitting and thinking, okay, how can we really make a difference as a community, right? Considering, yes, Bayer sits here and Maxine is looking at different people, thinking that the United Nations associations, etc., each one of us will bring one piece, and each one of us also need to learn a lot. Then how can we overcome? How can we use, and while Dick was talking, I was taking notes. I was like, Bayer Foundation, strategy, leaps, there is a lot, yes. I believe there will be, I can be the bridge for our team, but I love this idea, and in my opinion, this could be our next step. After this big meeting here, we can have a joint meeting, thinking, how can we really advance? And there are a lot of efforts in St. Louis, but we need, I agree with you, we need to go beyond, we need to do more. And yes, absolutely, thank you for your question. And continence, absolutely, we need to think a little bit about how we go ahead for the next steps, but absolutely, you can count on me. I already send you a connection in the LinkedIn to ensure we are connected after that and we think together. Second point, I want to make the point, Carlos, because I saw Laura question. I didn't mention, because it's not, I'm more in the food side, but Bayer as a whole has the health as one of the big SDGs too. And for health, for Bayer, let me rephrase, for Bayer, the big two SDGs are SDG 2 and SDG 3, then health and hunger. Those are for Bayer. My answer in the beginning was my personal answer, then for me is SDG 2, gender equality, that's also part of Bayer strategy, I'm lucky. Then, and also climate, that is also part of Bayer, but I missed the one that's there, but not mine personally, only because I have not so much action, and I'm very much related to action. The health has a big team, like 20,000 people working on the SDG 3. This is really one important part. But yes, only back to Dick comments. I believe, Dick, you had a call for action, and I'm on board. A lot more needs to be done, and this really can be a good example from the result of this community here. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Dick, and great interaction and feedback. Gabriella, I really appreciate it. Yeah, there's a lot more to be done in terms of taking action, especially, and hopefully this summit and these discussions help spur that action. We don't want to just, these conversations to die here on a Saturday morning. So hopefully we can move on this, and there's been a lot of great insights that have been shared. And while we're coming up to about the end of the panel, I did want to offer the floor up to Maxine and Gabriella. If you have any final kind of overarching words or statement that you'd like to provide the audience for the discussion today before we move into the panel discussion. Maxine, go ahead.
I would say that one of the things that I think St. Louis needs to still be focused on, and all of us are here on a Saturday morning, so we care about this, is bringing as many things together as possible rather than reinventing the wheel all the time. I didn't, until Justin told me about this group, I had no idea. I bet there's several other groups, working on similar, a part of this or a part of that. And we have to start to bring people together because we don't have enough people to spread them out so thin, and we could get to the solutions much faster. And the other is to bring community to the table. Whatever that community is, as many people as you can, as often as you can, because there's always new people coming into that community, and they have brilliant ideas. They may not know exactly how to articulate it or how to execute it, but something brilliant will come out if you allow people to, participate and feel welcome at the table. And then then the team can go at it. When you say, "Well, that's a great idea, let's develop that," but don't throw out the person that was thinking it. Bring them into it because you're educating them at the same time. And wherever possible, include our young people. We have tremendous talent in our young people, and especially north of Del Mar. There are amazing kids that I've had the pleasure and honor to meet and work with, and I can't wait for them to finish their education and come and help us make St. Louis a better place. But there's no lack of talent, and they have a lot of opinions. And I remember when I went to the Ferguson Commission meetings, there was one on a Saturday morning called For the Youth. And those kids had amazing insights. And many of those young people I'm friends with today. They went off to college, they graduated, they're working in New York or they're working in Chicago, and they're amazing young people. We need to get them back to St. Louis. We need to make sure that their talent is used here. That's my 2 cents.
Yes, I agree with Maxine, very good points. I appreciate Carlos just saying the opportunity. And one piece for me that's important for all of us here is remember our role, right? We cannot count so much in governments anymore. We all know this. And we have a role to play. Then each one of you here, you are a leader, right? You are one important leader for change. Then this is one piece that for me is a crucial part of the change that's necessary, is to recognize that I did a Coursera another day and I love it, was giving voice to your values. And I love this. For me, it was like a aha moment because it's exactly like what we need. We all have something that we believe, and again, yes, we wouldn't be here if not. And we need to ensure we stand up and we call others a little bit like Dick said, let's call others and like Dick did, in fact, and say, how can we act? It's really, in my mind, we only have 10 years, really. We don't have more. And it's not only in my mind, right? A lot of scientists are saying this. 10 years in seed production, in food production, is like that. Farmers produce now for next year. Then we are talking about 10 seeds plantations. This is almost nothing. Then if we want to invent or to bring a new solutions, for 5 years from now, this needs to be done now. If we want a new business model, like we have been working internally, for instance, this needs to be now. There is no one single season to lose. We don't have time, unfortunately. And back to Maxine's point, yes, we need the young. We need the people to, let's reframe this. Where we are, it's not very good. We did some advancements as a society, but there is a lot more to do. And we haven't engaged minorities, young, older. This was a society of few making decisions and making business models and offering some products. Okay, this didn't work. Then now we need to integrate. Each one of us need to know we have a role to play. There is no more time to wait. Governments, of course, we need to vote, but we cannot wait. We need to vote and act. Then I really, really appreciate a lot, Carlos, the opportunity. Maxine, thanks so much. Justin, Dick, Laura, and everyone that has been sending message. I appreciate a lot. This is an incredible opportunity for us to make a difference. And really, thank you so much. Count on us, count on me. And yes, always let's go ahead and making actions happen. Thank you.
Great, thank you both, Gabriella and Maxine. We really appreciate your time and participation in this St. Louis SDG Summit. It's been great dialogue. I think it's going to help us in the breakout discussions as we continue those conversations. Please give a round of applause to Gabriella and Maxine and everyone for your participation too. It's been great dialogue. And so now we're going to move off into the panel discussions. Justin, can you give us a breakdown of that real quick? And as you're breaking it down, I'm also going to be handling, we'll be handling the technical end from our side. But before Justin talks, the breakout sessions, we're going to have 3 breakout sessions, and everyone's going to be placed into them automatically and not necessarily manually. So if there's, you know, for people that have certain interests in one or the other, that's great, but we did want to spur conversation into these breakouts, not necessarily by a certain interest, but I think it can evolve into the discussion. So Justin, I'll hand it over to you.
Hello, everybody. Just echoing what Carlos said, the 3 breakout sessions are 3 of the signature priority areas from the Ferguson Commission. The first one is Youth at Center with Rontasia and Trina. Excuse me. The second one is Opportunity to Thrive with Vanessa and Felicia Pulliam. And the third is Racial Equity with Pamela and Charlie Cooksey. So now Carlos will be sending you all to your nice breakout sessions. Please enjoy. We look forward to seeing you all here shortly.
Thanks, Justin. And yes, we have lead guest facilitators and then also board members of the United Nations Association of St. Louis that are helping to co-facilitate these discussions. And so this will go on for about 45 minutes or less, and then we'll come into the closing session. We'd also love to hear from from you as individuals participating in the summit in terms of some of the things that you've learned or gained in this conversation that we can bring into the closing session, so we can get as much participation as possible. So thanks, and that we'll be breaking out the groups here right now.
Then at Pinnacle Systems, she spent the majority of her engineering career in a variety of roles at Apple Computer Incorporation. She earned a BS in Mechanical Engineering at Georgia Institute of Technology, an MS in Mechanical Engineering at Stanford University, and an MBA at University of California, Davis. She is a proud mother to 3 beautiful and bright children, Kalani, Leah, and Radi. She credits her drive and accomplishments to the love and support of her grandparents, parents, siblings, and children, and her faith in God. Okay. Trina, would you like to add anything else?
No, just good morning and thank you. I just appreciate being part of this discussion. So thank you for the introduction.
Okay. And then I guess I'll go ahead and introduce myself as well. My name is Rontasia Hill. I am currently interning for the United Nations Association of St. Louis throughout this summer. And I am a political science major with an emphasis in international policy at Arkansas State University. And yeah, I guess we can begin just speaking about Youth at Center. Would you like me to start or would you like to go ahead?
Actually, I was going to ask, is it possible for us to do introductions all around? Like they've
of
heard
course.
who we are, a little bit about our backgrounds, but it'd be great if everybody could introduce. And being on Zoom calls like this now for the last 5 or 6 months, I know the difficulty in trying to have everyone introduce themselves and figure out who already went, who didn't. So I'll try to keep track, but I'll just maybe we can do that kind of popcorn method of I'll ask someone and then that person asks somebody, and I'll keep track if we get to a point where somebody still hasn't gone. But I will start with who's in my upper left-hand corner, my Brady Bunch screen, and that's Stephanie Gavin.
your mic.
I think you went back on mute, Stephanie.
Yes. Hi, I'm Stephanie Gavin. I am also a board member of the United Nations Association. I'm a retired teacher of English and Social Studies, and I now work for the nonprofit Civitas in St. Louis. And my students participated in Civitas activities when I taught, but Civitas works with youth throughout the metropolitan area and beyond. And one of our flagship programs is modeling the United Nations for middle schools and high schools. And everything we offer is free. And we're always looking for ways to engage youth in local and national and international activism. So, thank you. Oh, and so I guess I will, next on my screen looks like Bob Wilcox. Robert Wilcox, it says.
Bob is fine. And let's see. Yes, I'm unmuted. Can you hear me all right? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, good. Okay. I'm Bob Wilcox. I am also a member of the board. I'm a retired academic. And so I've been working on the board of the UNA for some years. And I'm very interested in what we're saying today. So, oh, and I should pass it on to, well, not many of us left, but I guess Izumi would be next.
Okay, thank you for inviting me. I'm a retired food technologist, food scientist, and I currently live in Illinois, but I worked in Central West End with the DuPont. And so I have been involved since retirement. I've been involved a lot of coaching.
And so I'm going to throw in a few more key terms there. So for us, we define power as the ability to act. And we think power comes from three sources. So the first source is organized people. The second source is organized money. And the third source is positional power. And so when we think about the relationship between racial equity and power, to me at least, they can't be separated. The ability to achieve racial equity is going to be directly correlated to the amount of power that is able to be built and wielded by folks of color in service of their future, their dreams, and in service of shifting the systems that impact their life outcomes. And so I just want to ground us in both this key term around racial equity, but also this idea of power and how they both work together to really power to support these shift in outcomes that, while it's focused on race, is a win-win for everyone. So yeah, with that, I would love to sort of just pass it around with a grounding question. Let's see, there's 12 people, one is me, so 11 people. Yay, Ricardo, where are you? I don't see you. Yes, he was. Oh, that's because his camera is hidden. Hey, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. What was that question? Let me pull up my notes. I was excited to see that message. So the first question I'm wondering is, in what ways has your life experiences been positively, in what ways have you benefited or been harmed by systems because of your race? So what way, and I'll drop it in the chat, 1 second. In what way? Okay, I just dropped it. Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just getting the question, sorry.
So I would love to, maybe I'll start with Laura, and then Laura, you can pass it to the next person. Maybe if we can keep it down to about 1 to 1.5 minutes. We'd love to hear in what way has your and your family's life benefited or been harmed by your racial identity?
Okay, well, benefited is really kind of hard to to say, because being white, you know, we benefited from being white in society and with systems for as long as we can remember. So I can't say I've been harmed because of my race. As far as benefited, you know, I grew up in North County. I grew up in a poor family, a working class family, and so our economic situation was limited by where we lived, by our education, etc. So while the benefits were better for me and my family as we moved on to get jobs, our jobs were particularly in the labor community. So I mean, I might be one to start, but that, you know, I'll leave it at that, because that's really where what my perspective is. Now, I worked for 30 years in DC, so I have some pretty different experiences with diversity, much better experiences with diversity. I'm living in DC for 30 years than here. So, but I'm back.
Thank you. And who do you want to pass it to, Laura?
I'm the next person in my view is Gabriella. So.
Sorry, yes, I was looking where to unmute myself. Okay, yes, kind of similar with Laura. One piece that I would call the attention is our friends have been from Brazil and here a lot of times Afro-Americans, and the way we feel it very close to our heart is getting the feeling that they need to work so much hard to be recognized or to be part of the recognition, even from companies, etc. Then generally speaking, I have been, and my kids too, stepping up.
Were put, concentrated, relocated, received significant additional economic investments from the federal government. First of all, the public housing units were higher quality. They had great amenities like parks and swimming pools and, you know, those sorts of things. There was infrastructure development so that they could travel with ease back and forth to the jobs. And none of this existed where Black folks were concentrated under these federal programs. That's important to understand, because it wasn't all over this country, and it wasn't necessarily the truth in many areas that Black and white folks decided they didn't want to live together. Okay, so now we have an intentional segregation of the population. So what that meant was we know where these communities are, and then we can turn our attention into nurturing and developing white communities. I think that's very important to understand that the federal government, the state government, and local policy and practice, it was the law, provided significant economic investment in white people and white communities to help them along. Okay, so then they began, the federal government began the process of developing single family homes. We know that single family home ownership is the #1 opportunity for growing intergenerational wealth. But white people had access to these no down payment, low interest loans to purchase homes at around $8,000, $10,000 in newly developed suburbs that went on to triple and quadruple in value, that they were subsequently able to pass along to their children and through their families. With the significant development and incentives for white communities wealth was built intergenerationally in white communities. Black communities didn't have any of that. So not only was there substandard housing, but there were no economic benefits, no access to federally insured mortgages, or and no access to transportation in order to get to jobs, even when the jobs were available. I think that's very important for us to understand, because it brings us to where we are now, where our communities are segregated, we don't live together, we really don't know each other, we don't know how this came to happen, but we're seeing the results of it now. And if we're going to address these issues, it's important to understand that these are policies that need to be undone, And what it helps us do is get away from the myth that helps to bolster and stand up what is a white supremacy philosophy. Because if you look at white neighborhoods, you're like, wow, if only those Black people would just buy a home, if only those Black people would just get a job, if only those Black people would invest in their communities. And it's important to understand that white people didn't do that alone. White people did that with a very significant intentional investment of federal dollars, public dollars, to stand up and support those communities along their journey to prosperity. Without that same investment, Black communities and other communities of color were left out of access to economic prosperity. So what that led us to are the conditions that we found now, where urban areas look like slums. You know, just this week in St. Louis, we had 3 buildings in the city of St. Louis just collapse and fall down, right? And they're surrounded by abandoned buildings, and you have all those Black folks living there, and it's like, what's wrong with these Black people? Why can't they do better? What it will take is the same level of intention, attention, and investment in these communities that have been historically denied. We can see that the buildings are falling down. So what does that mean that we need to do? What we need to do is provide access to banking, insurance, and financial services to these divested communities. I know that you're from places all over, but in St. Louis is the #1 unbanked city and region in the country. So what does that mean? That means that poorer communities, urbanized communities, Black folks, there are no banks in those communities. So there's a high cost to not having access to financial services. And what developed are these predatory lending practices, the title loans and the payday loans that extract significant amount of dollars. And so you've got poor people spending significant amounts of dollars just to access minimum financial services. Check cashing, which you can do at a bank. You deposit your check and it doesn't cost you anything. When you don't have a bank or access to a bank, it costs money to cash a check. And instead of writing a check or paying online, you've got to pay for money orders to pay bills. And so there's an increased cost without having access to financial institutions. And if the banks aren't there and you don't have a way to get to the banks, it just continues to cost more and more. Poverty is very, very expensive, very, very expensive. And what we know, what we know is from the Federal Reserve, having done significant research around poverty, is that if financial tools that were available more broadly were designed for lower income members of our community, they could do so much better, right? They'd be saving all of those dollars. They'd be building a relationship with the financial institutions that would give them an opportunity to access a mortgage or other loans, loans that they could use to acquire properties, start businesses, improve their properties, pursue education opportunities through, 2-year, 4-year institutions or institutions in the trades, right? Education in the trades. So a lot happens. It's not just, paying a fee to cash your check, but not having access to those financial services costs money, and you're on a consistent, like hamster wheel of just spinning and spinning and spinning and spinning without ever going anywhere. You really are trapped and stuck. And so it's important to have financial institutions available, accessible in these areas to give people an opportunity. Another thing that we talked about a lot was the need for universal access to communication, broadband, cable, information sources, right? People are increasingly beginning to understand, especially with all work from home and homeschooling, virtual education being required, that if you don't have broadband, you don't have Wi-Fi, you don't have cable, you can't do these things. You can't work from home. You can't continue to engage in a learning opportunity because you don't have access. And you also don't have the benefit of a broad base of information sources to help you understand with some accuracy, right? What exactly is going on, what's happening. Things are changing rather rapidly. So in order to stay on top of those things, you need to have access to information. I think it's important to know that the companies just didn't invest. It's not available. In communities that I work in and I serve right now, they still don't have access. St. Louis Public Schools, they had to set up hotspots so children could continue learning. And that was wonderful, but because of poverty conditions, they don't have the hardware. So you've got these little ones under a great amount of stress in communities that are already traumatized, dealing with poverty, trying to continue their education on a cell phone. A cell phone that is the only piece of hardware for a family for all of their needs, and there may only be one in a household, right? And so I think that we need to build that infrastructure, make sure that it's available, make sure that it's affordable, because that provides an opportunity for people to continue their education, to look for and secure employment opportunities that they can do from home, because folks want to work. They want to be a part of this new world that's being built through technology. So if you're on the other side of the divide and you don't have that access, you can only imagine how rapidly you're continuing to fall and how much more difficult it is to pull yourself and your family out of these conditions of poverty. One of the things that we highlighted in the Opportunity to Thrive component of the Ford through Ferguson report was the need to invest in and build transportation infrastructure. Transportation infrastructure. It used to be that there were other causes that were indicators of poverty. But today, it is access to transportation. Lack of access to transportation has risen as the #1 indicator of poverty. And why is that? Why is that? Well, as back to housing, right? So let's not forget how we got segregated and how these suburbs were financed and supported. But as the suburbs moved, the businesses moved with the populations that they traditionally employ. And so the economic opportunities, the job centers, move further and further away from the urban areas where Black and brown folks were intentionally limited, restricted, right, through federal programs. So you've got these buses. There aren't very many of them, and they usually don't go to where the jobs are. And if they do, one woman told me a heartbreaking story in the testimonial in one of our working group public hearings, public meetings. So she was spending an hour and 20 minutes a day on a bus to access her minimum wage job at a bakery. Yes. Nearly 3 hours a day in transportation to a minimum wage job. At that time, the one-way trip cost $3.50. So that's a $7 daily round trip, which means she's working 1 hour a day just to transportation. Just to pay for transportation en route on a bus. So what does that mean? Not only is it difficult, not only do you have to exert a lot of energy, not only is it exhausting, but that's at least based on commutes in St. Louis, which are just not that long. 2 hours a day that she doesn't have to focus on her family, whether that's spending time to get to a grocery store. Most of these impoverished areas are also food deserts. So you have to go outside of your community to get access to healthy food. Some of that time in commute could be accessing good, high quality, healthy food for your family with time to prepare the meal. So let's give that an hour, right? Let's give the transportation to the grocery, an hour a week. That leaves us 9 hours a week that you could be preparing the meals, but more importantly, that you could be supporting and nurturing your family, assisting your children with homework, doing those run-of-the-mill chores at home, whether that's, sweeping up the sidewalk or raking leaves or, painting something that needs a little touch up. Those sorts of things require time. And so with the jobs being so far away and the difficulty of accessing them because of the lack of investment in transportation infrastructure, so now we're piling on some challenges. We're just stacking them up and saying, well, what's wrong with these people? It can't be that difficult. It is that difficult. I live in St. Louis. St. Louis is designed for automobile travel. You don't have a car in this community, it is very difficult to live. And I will tell you, my children have traveled rather extensively because they're curious and they're courageous. And they don't want to be here. They come back to visit, like, oh, because they've got to drive. In other urban areas, we've made investment in public transportation. One, it's better for the environment. Younger people are very conscious of what their carbon footprint looks like. They need and want public transportation. And in other communities, people have it. So we need more buses, smaller buses that are running much more frequently, investment in light rail that provides access to the region, the regional benefits and amenities. Those things are very, very important, and that comes through policy. Carlos, it looks like you have something you want to ask me.
Yeah, Felicia, thank you so much. You know, regarding, and it's a great amount of information, and yeah, I've, you know, in terms of the signature priority and the opportunity to thrive, also with things that are going on. I mean, I know this is a really long process that takes place with a lot of stuff that you talked about in terms of transportation, access to transportation. I'll just throw out, you know, the North-South Metro line expansion. I know that's a huge project, and it's probably limited in scope, but you know, how do you perceive that project? I know I don't know if that's still a may or may not happen type thing, but I know it's there, and or maybe there are other projects that are underway that you've witnessed or you're seeing that help address, you know, the lack of transportation or lack of access to transportation issue.
Well, Bi-State has, thank you for that question, Carlos. Yeah. Well, Bi-State has made some improvements. They actually have. They've developed some transportation hubs, done some development around transportation where you can purchase groceries and those sorts of things in those hubs to make it easier for people. But I want to get back to that North-South, right? In this moment, the President of the United States is saying from our White House, from the people's house, that any further inclusion or access will destroy the suburbs, right? You can't have those people coming here. It's gonna just wreck your way of life. And so specifically here in St. Louis, where there's a lot of segregation, fifth most segregated, lots of historic racism, many of the examples of segregation and racist policies and practices, they were built and developed here, and then we exported those across the country. We have a very unique racial history in St. Louis. And what it's done, unfortunately, is through this propaganda, through the falseness, made people afraid of one another. We believe that it will be bad for the people that live beyond the urban areas if Black and brown folk have access to them. So then you've got a pushback against that kind of investment. And so we have to get over that, right? So that's a cultural shift. But it's hard to do. It's hard to do when you're ticking along, making progress, and then bam, we find ourselves in this moment with this rhetoric, right? To help people understand that these things are not necessarily so. The pandemic and the need for investment in technology, access to financial institutions, upgrade for transportation infrastructure, investment in development in new jobs, training people for the jobs of the future and providing access to people that are talented. They can do that job. How do we know? We know because Launch Code proved it, right? You don't need a 4-year degree. What you need is appropriate, adequate, targeted education and training to access these jobs. So we got all these thousands of programming jobs. We don't have anybody to do the jobs because we haven't bothered to invest in the people that we have. We keep looking to bring new people in, but what about the people that are here? So what we know through this effort with Launch Code, which is very, very innovative, has been remarkably and incredibly successful and now serves as a national model, is if we just build it, if the invitation is authentic, the environment is welcoming, it's not a threat, it's not hostile, right? That people will access the services and they literally have all of the talent that they need to do the jobs that will lift them out of poverty. Because if you can go from driving a bus, go through these 9 months, do your internship, and get an $80,000 a year job, you have dramatically changed the course of not only your life, but your family's life. So I think that those things are important, and it takes innovative, open-minded, solution-seeking people to help us develop those kinds of strategies and efforts.
Yeah, definitely agree. And Launch Code, as you mentioned, is a superb example. Like, I mean, especially with the need for software developers and the demand for that in the industry. And it can be huge for the greater community. And I think I was talking offline a little bit with Dick, and I think he also has some great examples of things that are also happening in like the North St. Louis area. Dick, are you able to highlight a few things?
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks, Carlos. And kind of notwithstanding the history that Felicia has outlined, and even evidenced by the fact that when some of that HUD housing was being built, one of the more infamous failures was Pruitt-Igoe, and to show the degree of mentality of separation, there was one building was all black, the other building was all white, and the street in between was called Division Street. That said a lot about the mentality of what was happening back then by both the federal government and the city. But looking more prospectively, and I referenced in the earlier discussion the need to begin to, and some promising things that are starting to focus on doing with North St. Louis. We heard from Maxine in terms of her project. I've been pretty involved since I left the chamber in 2012 in a number of initiatives. I was involved with Jim McKelvey in helping him raise the money for Launch Code. And I think just in the last month, 2 additional entities like Launch Code have established themselves here in St. Louis, which is great. But at the end of the day, having a job, and having a job that is accessible, as Felicia was saying, where you don't spend 2 hours a day getting back and forth to it, is important. And I look to several things that I think can be opportunities to be leveraged. Was actively involved with our congressional delegation and mayor and the owners of the properties in North St. Louis for the North Side project in St. Louis City, keeping and winning the NGA. And while most people focus on the high-tech, very high-paying jobs in an NGA, there are also entry-level jobs and access to pathways to become part of an industry that we want to be the next sort of focal industry in St. Louis, much as we did over the past 20 years with plant life sciences. We wanted to have geospatial intelligence be that. And while this hasn't been announced yet, the Carpenters, in a very interesting pragmatic move, with the number of people who are leaving, of workers who are leaving their industry, retiring, they have recognized that fulfilling the sustaining of their union is going to be a function of their recruiting and training Black and brown tradesmen and tradeswomen to build things. And people look at the Carpenters and they think, okay, we're a union town, it's a union. They've got a multi-billion-dollar pension fund. They're probably the biggest impact investor in the city of St. Louis. They are about to build a training facility at the corner of Jefferson and Cass that will train 2,000 people a year. And their intent in locating it there is to attract African-American students to go into the trades, to be trained. And just a couple of weeks ago, someone that folks on this panel may have read about, Dr. David Lenahan, announced a hospital, first phase of a teaching hospital named after the former Homer G. Phillips Hospital, and to go along with a medical school and a nursing school and an allied healthcare school that he had announced in March. And the significance of that is not only that it's being located in an area called HealthWorks Village in North St. Louis, is not only that it's going to provide healthcare. So people talk about driving to work. If you have an emergency, you've got to go something like 7 miles to BJC to provide healthcare directly in the neighborhood. But his track record was in Harlem in recruiting and training African-American doctors and nurses. He was recruiting and graduating 40% of his class as African-American doctors, the highest of any in the United States. And he was so successful at that a venture fund in New York involved in education said, if you're willing to do more of this, we'll put $250 million into a fund called Tiber Health that you can co-run. And 5 years ago, they purchased their first project outside of New York in Ponce, Puerto Rico, called Ponce Health Sciences. And their record for the last 6 years has been the same with Hispanic doctors and nurses. And their third facility is going to be Ponce Health Sciences. When I talked this week with a gentleman, a national journalist that some of you may have read some of his stuff, Joel Kotkin, was describing some of these things from a St. Louis perspective. He said, this is something that's really unique, that St. Louis has an opportunity in to provide that concentration of job opportunity that runs the full gamut from entry level to very high-tech jobs in an inner city location that is dramatically underserved. So I guess the point I make in that is, you know, we're capable of screwing up anything in St. Louis, I suppose. And there was a quote from former Mayor Lindsay in New York, in the public arena, no good deed goes unpunished. You know, we need to make the most of this. We need to start thinking on some of the points that Felicia was making of how does this tie to transportation, and what Carlos was just saying. From what I have seen, and we did a lot of transit-oriented development in Denver when I headed the chamber there, and it was an opportunity creator for low and moderate income people to get to jobs. The initial design for the north-south metro line is horrible. It needs to be rethought, and I think the good news is they are starting now to rethink it. and I guess my bottom line point is, I think we have some initial opportunities. Maxine talked about some other ones in terms of further west on Del Mar. And I'm sure there's some community-based opportunities that are being done by neighborhood-based groups. But these major employers have the potential of wealth creation that was a major predicate in that past history that was missing. And I'm hopeful that we take an opportunity to make the most of it.
That's really incredible. Thank you so much for that, Dick. And I would like to say that in addition to that, one of the things that I think is important is the creation of both the promise zone and the opportunity zones, because that provides an additional incentive to look at an area and target necessary investments.
Yeah.
And especially with opportunity zone, it provides individuals an opportunity to participate in the rehabilitation, redevelopment, development of economic benefits for underserved communities. And to the point of health, that's an excellent example. It's exactly what we need, because research confirms for us that health professionals of color are more likely to serve communities of color, to understand the unique circumstances and typical ailments in those communities, to address them and help them become healthier.
That's a great point that Dr. Lenahan makes. He's a white Irish Catholic from Chicago who married a woman from St. Louis, but he makes the point that what he's learned from the experience in Harlem and the experience in Ponce, Puerto Rico, is cultural competency in medical care is key. And as he said, a white Irish Catholic, you don't touch me. If I'm in the hospital room with my spouse, the doctor talks to the two of us. If it's a Hispanic family, there are 35 people and brothers and sisters and uncles and aunts, and everybody is hugging. An African-American family, and your point, when a doctor or other medical professional graduates from an institution that is in their community, there is a significant percentage of them that opt to stay in their community and provide health care to their neighbors. And that's a community development advantage as well as a health advantage.
And I think that's important to understand. I like to use the phrase cultural proficiency, because when we say cultural competency, it indicates that we get to a point where we've got it. But hailing from a legacy of educators, you never have it. We've got to be lifelong learners. And understanding, the differences in the way we do things. We're a very communal people. When the federal government decided to define a family, it defined,
Not destroying our world. All right. Do I go back whole group?
Great work. Thank
you, Gabriella. Bye.
Bye.
Justin, should we go back to the big room?
Yeah, but I don't know if we press leave, does that leave the breakout group, or does that leave?
Probably leaves the whole.
Yeah.
So you. No, it does say leave room.
Yeah.
Everyone say cheese. Can we do a quick picture?
Yeah.
Ellen. Okay, hold on 1 second. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, I'll send that picture to Justin. See you all later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
St. Carlos said he's there. Oh, there it is.
Hello? Oh, Sharon, I'm on a. Oh.
right, I'm trying to get everybody back into the main session right now. I will give it a moment for everybody to get back in here. Get some music here going.
Carlos, you have bad taste in music.
You hear the music? Good. All right, I think we have everybody back into the session right now. So yeah, we want to take a moment just to say thanks for participating this morning with the St. Louis SDG Summit. This is our first summit, so we're hoping to continue this in the future. But before we go on, would anybody like to share what they got out of the breakout sessions or even from the panel discussion earlier, and share with the wider group on takeaways from those discussions that we can share with everyone? You can either raise your hand or feel free to just speak up or even include it in the chat.
I think that one big takeaway from everything is just the idea that when tackling an idea, concept, or an issue, it has to be done as a collective. It's important that individuals share their thoughts, but in order for it to really be expanded on and for solutions to come out of that, it's like a group effort, and that's something that people have to take in consideration in order to make sure that change does happen, and it's a good way for it to.
Yeah, that's a very important point, and I think when it comes to the signature priorities and the SDGs as a whole, this takes collaboration. That it takes starting the conversation and brings people together. Saturday morning, whatever day it might be, we have to have these conversations, and if they don't happen now, I think Gabriella mentioned earlier, if we don't do it, who's going to do it? So thank you guys for showing up and participating. Justin, do you have any thoughts on kind of how things came together or conversations from your breakout?
I'll say this. I appreciate everybody that allowed me to observe in Breakout 2, I think it was. It was on racial equity. And one thing I can say about our group was they were very authentic and transparent. That's just my little takeaways. There were many other great things, but yeah.
Awesome, thanks, Justin. And Stephanie has a question too, so I'll bring you on, or sorry, has your hand raised.
Yeah, it's not a question. I just wanted to say that well, first of all, this has been amazing. Maxine and Gabriella were fabulous to start this off and give us, through Maxine, we got a local perspective of SDGs and a little bit more of a global perspective that's being worked on locally through Gabriella, but all of the ways that it connects. And then because we were working in my group with ideas thinking about kids, and as Trina said it so well, we need to talk to the students themselves and kids everywhere, are so egocentric. I mean, that's just where they are, you know. And so looking at the SDGs from a very personal, local level, and then expanding it is such a great approach, because to think about Ford through Ferguson's goals as being so closely directed to or related to the UN's SDGs is something that can really be instrumental for getting more youth involved, I think.
Yeah, that's a very powerful statement, and definitely, you know, what we can do here at the regional level, I mean, I think it's very complementary to things that are taken across the world. So hopefully we can share perspectives and point of views to bring that collaboration together. Does anybody else have something that they'd like to chime in with? Gabriella, Dick, Trina?
Yes, I would like to again reinforce what has been said, and I agree with Stephanie. It has been awesome opportunity, Carlos, Justin, everyone, and the small group complementing the big perspective and very action-oriented. I love it because we are finalizing this, feeling we can do, and already thinking, I know everybody here is thinking, okay, there are some possibilities for us, and Monday will be different because we have something more with us than really leading towards action. That's something that we all are worried about, right? Instead of just one conversation with no action. Then I really appreciate the opportunity. Big, awesome group also, Carlos, very, very well done. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Great. And yes, count on me, please, everybody. Thank you.
Awesome.
Carlos, I would just have a comment for our colleagues on the session this morning who are from outside of St. Louis. I can't tell you how many of my friends around the country have called me after Trump had those two clowns from our neighborhood as props with their AK-47 machine guns, that the Central West End is not the suburbs, which they were trying to say, and B, it's an integrated community, and C, those two people do not represent St. Louis. For anybody who's on the session here from outside of St. Louis, the people on this session are more representative of St. Louis than those two people were.
Yes, thanks, Dick. I think definitely these issues go beyond or, you know, help highlight the progress that we are making as a community, and, you know, not, you know, what happened in their lawn was not reflective of the kind of people that are here, and also like the action that we are taking as a collective whole. So thanks for bringing that up, and that was good. Anybody else wanna have any words? I love that we have a lot of guests here this afternoon and this morning. So very thankful for all the participation that we've had. Would love to have anybody from one final comment, if you'd like.
Carlos, this is Vanessa. Sorry, I saw there was a comment in the chat asking if people took notes and if they're going to be available to the group. So I don't know if you want to speak on that.
Yes, thank you, Vanessa. Our point is to create a report after this summit. So there were some notes that have been taken throughout the course of the event, and we'll be sure to publish that as soon as we can to get that in the hands of everyone, and to also hopefully continue these dialogues and, you know, set up for another future SDG Summit, hopefully in person. So thanks for that question. I believe it was, yeah, Catherine, thanks for the question. Okay, so here in the next few moments, we're gonna have, we'd like to poll everybody who's been a part of this summit. So we do have some questions. The first couple of questions are demographic questions, and then the other questions are getting your perspectives or thoughts on the SDGs. So I'm gonna run that poll, but at the same time as you're polling, if you have a piece of paper in front of you, like a white piece of paper, and want to write on it something that you really got out of the summit, and put a hashtag of shaping our future with that that comment or that, you know, 1 or 2 words would be great on your paper, or even a sentence statement. And then we'll share it with everyone here on the display and trying to a fun exercise. So we're going to start the poll here and start getting your thoughts on, you know, any comment or an SDG that might be a favorite, or progress that you see that's being made. We appreciate it. So I'm going to launch the poll. The first question is, what is your gender? I guess I launched the whole poll at the same time, maybe. Okay. Well, if you're
Just to clarify, Carlos, this is anonymous, right? So nobody's
yeah,
going to.
and this is anonymous, correct. Thank you. All right, we'll give the poll 1 more minute. We have 23 out of 27 people who have taken it, so that's pretty good. I just ended the poll, so I'm going to share the results with everyone. All right. So wow, we have the majority of our attendees are female. That's great. So I think we're definitely addressing SDG 5. Age range, I would say it's looks like a decent mix. Although, yeah, we have some participants who are, yeah, a good mix of individuals. It's great to see. The majority who live in the St. Louis region, but then we do have some people from outside the region. And it looks like, you know, the majority of people are familiar with the SDGs prior to this event, which is great. And then a few that are somewhat familiar or not familiar. So great to have everyone involved. So do you think you and the world are off today, better today than we were 5 years ago, marking the 5 years of achievement towards the SDGs? 17% said yes, 57% said no, and 26% said maybe. So I believe we still have a long way to go, but it's good that we're having this dialogue. And do you believe the SDGs can be achieved by 2030? 22% said yes, 26% said no, and 52% said maybe. So yeah, I think, you know, it sounds like we have a lot of optimists here. So I think we can make it happen. And from the summit, do you feel empowered to help achieve the SDGs? So the majority of you said yes, which I'm glad that you feel inspired and empowered. One person said no, and one person said maybe. So appreciate that feedback too, that we can also utilize for this. So thanks again for taking that survey. And you know, at this time, we'll also showcase our word or statements. If everybody wants to lift it up in front of your video. I don't know if everybody can see each other's. Awesome.
If you stop sharing, we're seeing your screen, I think. Are we?
I think whoever's talking. Oh, yeah.
Hey, Carlos, can you see my son?
No, it's the background.
Oh, I'm going to have to change it. All right, give me a second.
I see Yahira says collaboration and goal 17. That's great. I also included collaboration. I can't read everybody's. It's kind of tough. All right, Jack, you have the intersection of global and local issues. Great, that's awesome. Love to hear that. Felicia, I can't read yours. Can you read yours out loud for us? Do you mind? Or Trina, sorry, I meant Trina. And you're on mute. There we go.
Mine said empowerment to make change comes from authentic modeling, conversation, and strategizing with our youth.
Awesome. That's really good. I like that a lot. And yeah, everybody can write them in the chat if they want. Does anybody want to also share what they wrote down? How about Catherine?
I wrote, change is possible if we work hard and really challenge ourselves to look at system cycles and how everything is connected.
Very good.
I said the citizens of St. Louis want to pursue an equitable and sustainable community.
Very true. Right, spot on. How about Maggie?
I wrote down that equity benefits everyone. One of the comments that came out of our discussion was that when we're so separated across races, especially in an increasingly global world, that does harm to everybody because we're not equipped to actually work globally. And so that equity and sort of forming these connections is a benefit to everyone, no matter what race you are.
Very good. Yeah, I think that came out of the discussions too that were taking place this morning. Felicia, did you have anything written down?
Seeking solutions.
Seeking solutions, great. So we're trying to be proactive in solving problems here. So thank you for your dialogue this afternoon as well. Anybody else want to share? Olga, I know you have a lot to share. Not to put you on the spot. I don't know if she can hear me. We can't hear you, Olga. So, Ellen.
Okay. Yeah. I think I feel I'm supported. The breakout, the room I was in is the racial equity. So I think as an international student, I feel empowered and supported by those community developers, and so I feel very excited. Thanks for this opportunity.
Awesome. Thanks, Ellen.
Welcome.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for including those notes and including them in the chats. That's really important, and it's actually great feedback for us as we continue to evolve these discussions and move them forward. Basically in closing, we want to thank everyone for attending. Justin, would like to leave the floor to Justin for any closing remarks that you have. And thank you for taking the lead and providing this vision for the SDG Summit. Big round of applause to Justin. He's done a lot of work and it's been fun working with you.
Likewise, Carlos, I thought I was on mute till I raised my head up and didn't see the red mic, but thank you all. I appreciate you all coming out on this Saturday. I wish we could have did this at the History Museum and had some nice omelets or something. I like stuff like that with some salmon in the inside, but COVID hurts all of that. But nevertheless, I just want to leave you all with some key statements and comments that come from our international United Nations around response around COVID. And some of the key phrases is saving lives, protecting societies, recovering better. When I think about that, it makes me think about how can we take advantage of COVID and get the things that the people not only need but deserve, and not only give them to a minimal, but give them a true opportunity to thrive. When I think about some of the SDGs, when it talks about innovation and sustainable development, I think about the fourth industrial age that our state is slightly a part of, but from a global perspective, they're working with artificial intelligence, machine, and what is it called? Help me out, Carlos. I can't think what it's called. Machine intelligence and some other things. And our children are being left out of this. So as I say, how can we, when he talks about recover better, think about it from a personal standpoint. Think about how much better our lives would be if we can break the digital divide here in St. Louis. Think about what that impacts. Healthcare, we have elders that can't go to a doctor's office. My grandmother doesn't even know a flip phone even exists. What is she going to do with telehealth? But just so happens that they do have that, but there are many other elders that don't. Think about our children. Some of them are getting used or refurbished or just inadequate type of resources and tools to do this. And they have to share that with their siblings, I'm assuming, with different hotspots and things of that nature. And some other points to look at is, how do we create effective and affordable healthcare access and services to all? How do we encourage voices and representation and meaningful participation in social dialogue during this time, during COVID, that will help create the possible actions that we will take that will help lead us into the 10-year mark for the SDGs, and also we got a little more than 9 more years after that from the Ferguson Commission report. But what does that look like? How can we, matter of fact, I want to challenge you all to think about what would be a perfect solutions to this if you just had a pot load of money. Because there's going to come a time, everybody, where we're going to be in some community spaces and they're going to ask us, what is it that we want? And we just say we want something we have to show them what we want. You all are some great people, great minds, and have access to a lot of great best practices and reports. It's time to put those out, not just from an institutional or organizational standpoint, but from a communal standpoint. Someone spoke about it here a moment ago about community and knowledge. Think about if the people are empowered with the things that developers know, or other government entities or organizations know, to help guide their communities where they want to be. And in closing, I'm gonna leave you all with this. How do we build a better future for all and do it in solidarity? I don't have any more words. I'm gonna pass it over to Carlos. I love you all. Hope everybody's staying nice and healthy. Hope somebody's going to get some good lunch after this, or maybe you already had your lunch. But thank you all. Hope you enjoyed.
Great, thank you, Justin. And yes, let's all remain in solidarity and moving forward together. Couldn't have said it better. And we will also end with, there's some great people here. I mean, you all are great people. A lot of people are doing great work with, from Trina, Felicia, Charlie, Maxine, Gabriella, all of us. So hopefully you all connect here after this session and continue these conversations. The United Nations Association of St. Louis is also a membership-driven, volunteer-based organization. So if you have an interest to get involved and join, definitely check us out at una-stl.org. We'd love to have more people and grow our movement. And after this, the conversation doesn't stop here. So we want to highlight one way in which the conversation is continuing, not only here locally, but where you can participate in these global sessions. The United Nations is hosting its UN General Assembly here in September. So I definitely urge you to participate in the UN General Assembly. And I have a video here really quick, just to bring it up, on how you can do that. So once I get it here, great. All right, so hopefully some of you are following the UN General Assembly Week happening in September and bring these dialogues then and there. And then also just want to give a last thank you to everyone, to you guys for participating, to Gabriella, to Maxine, to Felicia, to Trina, to Charlie, and thank you to our board members as well for helping facilitate these discussions, Vanessa, Rantasia, Pamela, and our board members for attending, Stephanie, Bob, Luz, and I hope I'm not missing anybody else. And so we hope to continue these dialogues. And thank you again, everyone. Have a great rest of the afternoon. And thank you, Justin. Congratulations, Justin. And hope to see you guys all again soon.
Thank you. Great job. Thanks so much, guys. Justin. Thank you.